Hello everybody and welcome to part 31 of Kerbal Space Program. The journey continues. We start this episode exactly as we finished the last one, only about 100 in-game days later on. Again, our science lab is full of science, so again we're going to get that transmitting back down to Kerbin, where it, again, will probably just sit until we possibly do a follow-up series to this one. Last episode we set our new interplanetary craft, the Copernicus, on its way to Eve. It's about 60 days out at the moment. Our other missions, our returning probe from Joule, that's going to be about another year. And the same with the Ptolemy on its way to Dres. With that science successfully transmitted back down to the surface of Kerbin then, I think it's time for us to go and see what fun and frolics we'll be up to today. So a few days later we find ourselves here with the Copernicus, rapidly approaching Eve, and as with all of my other interplanetary missions, it's about now that I like to check on things, see how our final approach to our destination is going, and perform any correction manoeuvres that need performing. Generally speaking, we're just checking that we'll end up going the right way round the planet, that our approach won't leave us in too inclined an orbit, and also that we get reasonably close to Eve, but not too close, as we'll almost certainly have to perform a plane change, and that's easier if you're further away from the planet and your velocity is lower. We switch to the map view, and it's not looking too bad. We will be coming in the right way round Eve, but we could do with aligning it a little better and also dropping that closest approach a fair bit. So we start planning our manoeuvre. We start in the general map view before we switch to focus Eve specifically, just to make things a little clearer, a little easier to plan. And before too long, we have our correction manoeuvre plotted. With that done, it's time to prepare the Copernicus. We get it turned towards the manoeuvre node. Now this is still a very big and heavy craft. This is quite a long and laborious process. Still got a lot of fuel aboard, which we won't be losing for a little while yet. But eventually we do get everything lined up. We reach our manoeuvre point and we light up those three massive open-cycle gas core nuclear engines, which are part of the interstellar mod we're using for this series. The burn itself is quite light on the Delta V, which is one of the advantages of doing the correction manoeuvre this far away from the encounter. And before too long we have finished that off and we go to check on the map view to see if that's done as we've intended. Everything looks good here, so all that's left is for the crew of the Copernicus to wait for a little under 50 days until they arrive within Eve's sphere of influence. Without anything on the schedule then, we follow the Copernicus as we approach the purple planet for the second time this series. Having gained our encounter, it's time for us to plot our orbital insertion burn. Now, this is going to be a long one, not as bad as it could have been, because we're coming in quite this far out. Generally speaking, it's more efficient overall to come in as close as you're going to get and just perform one long burn there. Although I don't know how that works out because we're going to do a plane change as well. I haven't done the maths specifically on that. 20 minutes is about as much as I'd be willing to do in a single sitting, however, so we've probably judged that about right. We get our craft lined up, we get ourselves to about 10 minutes until our manoeuvre node, and we light up those engines once again. So yeah, another long old burn, roughly the same in time and Delta V as the transfer burn that took us to Eve. Also, for those of you who've noticed and are wondering why the remaining Delta V readout keeps jumping about the place, that's just where I'm sort of enabling different fuel tanks in readiness for any particular burn. I'm trying to bleed off the fuel from the extremities first, just so this craft becomes as easy to turn as possible, as quickly as possible, because we don't need to throw it around the place at the moment, but a little later on in the mission we will need to have it a little bit more agile than it is at the moment. Having inserted ourselves into an appropriate orbit, it's now time to plan our plane change. I'm going to try and get this as close to a zero inclination orbit as is possible. It's not going to affect things too much during the business end of the mission, but it will help a lot when we start trying to plan our journey back from Eve to Kerbin, and well, we've kind of got the Delta V to spare, so why not? It's another long one, not quite as long as the previous burn, but still a bit hefty, so we get through that, we check to see what our orbit is like, and we've got our inclination to within a degree of zero, so I think we'll say that's good enough. After that, we can begin the laborious process of trying to burn our orbital altitude down. Now, of course, Eve is the Kerbal system's Venus analogue, but unlike Venus, Eve has the highest gravity by quite some distance of any of the rocky planets, of any of the planets you can land on, and as a result of that, it takes quite a lot of delta V, a long burn time, to perform any altitude change, as it would compared to the same altitude change on, say, around Juno or Kerbin or Moho, for example. Having brought ourselves down to 1,000 kilometres, we are going to go further down to our final altitude of 95 kilometres, from where we will stage our landing. Yeah, as I said, long and laborious. This is an hour and a half of my life that I am not getting back. Eventually, though, we do find ourselves here in an orbit of about 95 kilometres, which puts us about 5 kilometres above the start of Eve's atmosphere, ready to begin with our mission in earnest. The last time we were at Eve, I did take just the one set of science readings, so I did consider taking a second one, so that we could take that back to Kerbin and process it in the lab or take it back down to the surface, whatever we didn't do with the first set. But by this point, I was so fed up with the game, I thought, no, you know what, sod it. If I do want to do that, we'll do it on the way back up. We'll do that after the landing mission. Anyway, we've arrived, we are where we wanted to be, and now it's time for us to do what we came here to do, to land on this planet. We transfer our crew across. Tommel Kerman will be leading this one, and he will be joined by Gwenby. We need a scientist to go down there to reset some of the experiments, so those are the two lucky Kerbals that will be the first to set foot on Eve. We enable one of the monopropellant tanks. We don't have a lot of that on this craft, just trying to keep it as light as possible. And we separate from the Copernicus, ready to head down to the planet. And as is traditional with the first time on a new planet, first time landing on a new planet, we are going to go and do this one live. So here we are once again, this time over Eve. Yeah, drifting away from the Copernicus. We're on a slightly lower orbit, so we should just continue to increase our separation. There it goes. Yeah. Now, where do I want to deorbit this from? Where's the day-night terminator? Actually, we're pretty much where I wanted to be. Maybe a little further round, but we need to get ourselves set up for the deorbit. Now, there are specific thrusters. These 4 thrusters above and below the wings on either side. Those are the deorbit thrusters. There's a lot of staging in this craft. Let's see. So I've just got to check my notes. The deorbit thrust. Everything on this is done by hotkeys. Just because when we're taking off and at certain points on the way down, but mainly when we're on the way back up again, I'm going to need to do a lot of things very quickly. So it's all going to be hotkeys. Let's enable our deorbit thrusters. And we're pretty much where we wanted to be, so let's fire those up. And we're looking to bring our periapsis down to about 70,000. And then just make our way into the atmosphere. Now these may be a little bit of a waste, because we're not going to use these, all the fuel in there. Nothing like all the fuel by the looks of things. But yeah, it's just to make sure the thing's as light as possible at all stages, particularly when we're sort of taking off and climbing. That'll do. Let's get ourselves turned around. I'm going to need to make sure the wings are pretty level as well, because a thick atmosphere, we want to come down. We don't want to get any wobble going on, which could throw us off from our... Well, I mean, it doesn't really matter if we throw ourselves off from our course, because we're going to have to do some kind of correction anyway. Round until we're in the atmosphere. That starts at about 90,000. There we go. The nose flips forward. Good stuff. And we're just going to keep pointing prograde until we're down to about 80,000. I don't know if this is strictly the most efficient way to do this, or the way that avoids the most reheating, but there's not a lot of information out there about landing on Eve with a spaceplane, surprisingly enough. I wanted to do a spaceplane just to take advantage of Eve's atmosphere, use that to sort of lift us up, especially now that we've got the nuclear turbojets. Yeah, doing this stock with a spaceplane, I think, would probably be impossible. I've seen one person do it, but that was that was ridiculous. The amount of staging they had to go through, and I think there's no way you'd do this with an SSTO. That would just let's time accelerate a bit further forward. There's no way you do this with an SSTO. That would just be it would be impossible. I mean, if someone wants to prove me wrong, by all means go ahead, because I would love to see that. But yeah, if we weren't using a space plane, the other thing is we'd have to have probably brought a much heavier lander up here to try to get a sort of a more traditional rocket off the surface. How are we doing? 83,000. At 80,000, we're going to start adjusting things. Where are we? 81,000. Let's just start coming out of time acceleration there. There we go. So we're going to switch to standard stability assist. Wings looking pretty level. And we're going to stage those deorbit thrusters. There we go. Just trying to keep ourselves as light as possible because this is a ridiculously heavy craft. The nose has already started to lift. Periapsis and apoapsis dropping reasonably rapidly. Descent rate. Vertical speed is dropping. I am going to just push out our air brakes, hopefully slow us down a little bit more. How are we doing? Yeah, absolute velocity is continuing to rise. I have to keep an eye on these lower air brakes because they are going to get very hot very quickly. So we're going to get what we can out of those, and then we're going to have to just put them away. Still got a bit more in it, I reckon. No, I'm going to stow them away now. Our absolute velocity is actually starting. Our overall velocity is starting to decrease. Our vertical speed, our horizontal speed, both going down. Yeah, so generally speaking, Eve is considered the hardest of all the planets to actually perform a landing on. Well, the hardest of all the planets it is possible to perform a landing on. So, yeah, we're sort of getting this out the way now. And if we do any future series, then, we can do it safe in the knowledge that the most difficult stuff is behind us. How's the heating looking? I might have to start flipping this about at a later point. And the camera flips because our periapsis is obviously below the relevant point. Oh, that just went up a lot. Because the danger with space planes is that if you get the balancing wrong, then the SAS, the stability assist, will be fighting to keep the nose down. But this is looking good. I mean, the trick with space planes is you've just got to have the center of lift well behind the center of mass, but that can cause problems when you're trying to maneuver in the lower atmosphere. So it's all about trying to strike a balance there, as is most things in KSP. Look at this landscape. It's a very, very purple planet, isn't it? I do like the sort of the green shade you get, though, sort of going from daylight to daylight to nighttime, just with the sunrise and the sunset. It's quite a beautiful little touch. A lot of things are getting very hot now. We are below 3,000 meters per second, though. Main engines are overheating. Have to keep an eye on that. Jesus, look at all of that. Some of those heating bars are looking very red, but we are continuing to slow. 2.5 kilometers a second. Approaching 50,000 meters in altitude. Oh my goodness, look at all of those heating bars. Stay together. Really starting to slow now. Oh, up to 4Gs, 5Gs, 6Gs. Below 2,000 meters per second. Nose being forced down. 1,600 meters per second. 1,500. 1,400. Still slowing down at well over 3Gs. 1,200. Okay, I think we're out of the woods. Okay, good stuff. Come on. It's just that... It's that weird bit you get with space planes, kind of that transitional altitude, where it just becomes really difficult to control. Whereas previously the atmosphere wasn't really strong enough to start buffeting you about, and after which, you know, the atmosphere is thick enough that you can actually get some... your wings can get some bite, your control surfaces can get some bite, and it becomes much easier to control. But just that intervening period where everything just can really go to pot if you're not concentrating. Let's try and level the wings out a bit more. Okay, coming in a little fast. Just trying to look at what's the lie of the land here. I think that's looking a bit bumpy, that's looking a little smoother, so I think we'll come about... Let's try and put her down somewhere over there. Speed's quite high, but I think that should bleed off just as we continue to sort of get lower and lower into the atmosphere. Coming down about 50 meters per second, that's quite a lot. What I am going to have to do, let's try and shallow that out a bit. Okay. What I think I'm going to have to do is get these engines going. The turbojets, and oh yeah, we need air intakes open. There we go, because the centre of mass is quite far in front of the centre of lift, so you can lose a bit of control authority in the pitch if you're not careful. So we just need to take care to see if we can maintain that, and if we need to fire up the engines a bit, then we'll do that. 300. 250. Yeah, I'm going to start throttling up these engines a little bit because we are going to lose a lot of speed. We're not careful. Maybe not quite that far. Okay. Just incredibly gently. Incredibly gently. Kill that. Brakes. Oh god, we're still going very fast. Come on. Come on. Slow down! Stop! Come on. You know you want to. There we go. And we are down! We are down on the surface of Eve. That was a bit nerve-wracking at the end because I know this vehicle can be quite fragile coming into landing. You need to get a very gentle touchdown. But no, we managed it. We're down in one piece. That's taken quite a while. I mean, even if once I've trimmed that down and edited that down, that's still going to take up quite a little bit of the quite a lot of the video. So I think we'll leave things there for the moment. I think we'll crack on. We'll crack on with actually exploring this place in the next episode. So yeah, that will be all for today. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please consider giving this video a like, maybe even subscribing, possibly even following me on Twitter, link in the description. Next time, well, I just said what we'll be doing next time. But until then, thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.